all so much. Today is our fourth and final career speaker panel, and I know I cannot wait for us to get started. So thank you all for sharing your name and your campus in the chat. We have so many participants today. So I'm going to just run through a few checklist items over how today will run. So here is our agenda up on the screen. So I'm going to go through some panelists introductions. I'll pass it over to Ms. Hendricks to do some rapid fire questions. You all will be able to also join in and tell us what you would rather do. And so it's just a fun little activity for us to get to know our panelists better. Then we will actually start the panel. Ms. Hendricks will ask some questions just to get it started. And then what we really want is for you all to be able to get your questions answered. And so we have some scholar moderators today who will be fielding questions from you all and just representing you all and being able to speak directly with our panelists. We really do need and want you all to participate today. So at the bottom of your screen on your little toolbar, this is a different type of Zoom than what you're probably used to. So there's a Q&A function. So you won't be typing your questions into the chat. The chat box will actually be disabled. We want you to be able to focus on what our panelists are speaking about today. Drop any question that you have in that Q&A box. Don't forget though that your teachers can see this, we can see this, your panelists are going to be able to see this. So make sure it's appropriate. And also you'll have an upvote option, which means if you see a question that you really like, that you want to be asked, you don't have to ask that same question. You can just vote it up and the ones with the top votes will go to the top of the screen. So that is the box that our scholar moderators will also pull from. And our panelists can also answer directly in that chat. If you do have any questions, please let us know. You can type to one of us directly, I believe. And so I am going to get started with our introduction. So you can see our STEM career professionals up on the screen. And I'm going to kind of go in a clockwise position. And if we could have during your introductions, if you could just say your name, the company that you are representing, and then a few sentences about what you do. We're going to ask some more detailed questions after our introduction section. So I'm going to have Mr. Marty start us off.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you. My name is Marty Carnett, and as it says, I'm a program manager with Texas Instruments. We design, manufacture, and test semiconductors or ICs that go into a variety of products such as cell phones, movie theaters, the projectors, infotainment systems and safety features in cars, Beats headphones, things like that, much more than just calculators. My job as a program manager is as our factories become full, I work with factories all over the world to move chips, these integrated circuits from one factory to another, so our customers get the chips they want when they want them. Thank you very much again, and I look forward to speaking with all as this session evolves. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Marty. Miss Anna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna, and I work for Citigroup, which is also known as Citibank, which is one of the biggest global banks here. I work specifically with financial planning and specifically work on the application that does all the reporting for finance.
This is actually Anna's second panel with us, so we're super excited to have you back. Thank you so much. All right, Miss Sky.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sky Myers. I am an associate research scientist at Precision HEOR. So I basically serve as a researcher or a consultant for this health economics and outcomes consulting group. I'm an epidemiologist by training, but what I do is I help design and execute studies for pharmaceutical and life sciences companies to see how their drugs or their products work in real world settings that aren't controlled in labs or just in tightly controlled areas. So we like to see how products and drugs work in the real world.
Awesome, thank you, Sky. And Sky is actually one of our Uplift alums, so be sure to ask her some questions about Uplift if you have any. All right, Wes.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. My name is Wes Seaton. I am the Regional Chief Operating Officer for the American Red Cross here in North Texas. My region covers 121 counties and about 9 million citizens and residents. In my role as the Chief Operating Officer here, I really oversee all aspects of our business, really focused on budget and supply management. And so with the Red Cross, some people know us from our blood services, where we do a lot of blood drives and in a lot of initiatives with that. But also, we do receive a congressional charter to work with our armed forces department, as well as provide disaster relief, both here locally in the US and around the world. So happy to be here, and I look forward to chatting with you guys.
Happy to have you. Thank you, Wes. And last but not least, Dr. Nathan, and another one of our Uplift alums.
Hey everyone, it's great to see you all here. It's so encouraging to see so many of our young youth, all of our kids getting so excited about this. So I'm a physical therapist. I work for Baylor Scott and White Institute for Rehabilitation. So what we do is we help patients get back to where they were functionally and physically. So whether they're having, some problems with walking, getting back to a sport after an injury, or even helping kids take their first steps. Our goal is to help patients get back to their goals physically.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our panelists for being here today. And so since we've now done our introductions, I'm going to pass it to Ms. Hendricks for us to do our rapid fire section.
All right, so we will go ahead and get started with rapid fire. So for my scholars on the call, you should start seeing some questions pop up on your screen. We're gonna break the ice before we start with some questions by answering these. So if you can go ahead and select which one you would rather do. And we'll start with our first question, which is, would you rather have a dog as a pet or a cat as a pet? And I'll ask that question to Wes, if you would mind answering that.
I would definitely rather have a dog as a pet.
A dog as a pet. What about you, Anna?
I agree. I think I would have a dog.
So it looks like with our scholars, dogs are currently winning as well, with about 78% of the scholars on the call choosing dogs over cats. I have a dog, so that's definitely what I would choose also. Let's go ahead and go to question number 2, which is, would you rather wear winter clothes all year long or summer clothes? And I'll ask that question to Marty.
No question about it. Summer clothes. Well, I moved from the East Coast. Yes.
Okay. So summer clothes there. And then Sky, if you wouldn't mind answering that one too.
I'm gonna say winter clothes because they're cuter, and I love coats and scarves.
I would agree with winter clothes are cuter. So let's see, that one is actually about 50-50 with our scholars. And if you haven't voted yet, go ahead and get your vote in. We'll go to our last polling question, which is, would you rather never have social media again or never have email? And I'll ask that to Dr. Nathan.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say never have an email. I actually don't even like to check my emails in the morning, so I would much rather have it to where I can just scroll through social media.
And that's exactly what our scholars are saying as well, with 79% choosing no email over social media. So thank you all for doing some icebreakers with us and sort of getting us started. We are going to move into some questions that I'll ask just to set the scene and lay a foundation for understanding what you all's jobs are and what your career entails. And then after I ask a couple of questions, we'll actually move to our scholar moderators, who will take questions from all of our scholars on the call. So scholars, as I'm going through my questions, if you think of anything that you want to ask, go ahead and drop that into the Q&A box. You should see at the bottom of your screen a little Q&A button, and you can start typing your questions in there, and then we'll answer them in just a little bit. But to start with, I would love to know what made you all interested in your specific job or pursuing a pathway in STEM or a STEM related career. And if I could have Sky answer that question first.
Well, throughout like grade school, so kindergarten through 12th grade, I loved science and I loved math, but I also loved people. And it wasn't until college where I was studying for the MCAT and I was just thinking about all of what I could do with, I was studying biology. So I was like, well, my options are either medical school or I could teach. But then I was introduced to the field of public health. And that totally changed my whole trajectory about what I thought I wanted to do. And I used a lot of mentors, a lot of networking, a lot of research throughout the way, but I found that public health kind of encompassed, the scientific aspect, but also working with people and the humanistic approach to problem solving. So I would say naturally just having an inclination for science and math, just, I don't know, through like life and whenever I was a kid, but also being in a collegiate space in which I could explore different fields of like science.
Thank you. And if anyone else wants to chime in there too, they can.
So this is Marty. I would say very similar to what Sky had mentioned. I've always loved math and science since I was in elementary school. Always liked to teach, to help and teach others and work with teams. When I grew up, neither of my parents went to college. And at that time, really, my mom, the only thing they understood was the only thing you could probably make a living at is being a doctor or a lawyer. And that was never in my heart. And, as I said, they really didn't know too much. So I figured math and science, chemistry was always a love of mine through school. But I had to do what interested me the most. So I basically continued my studies along that field in chemistry. And actually the job I'm doing, I do electrical engineering work for Texas Instruments. I didn't take a single course in electrical engineering throughout my studies into graduate school through my doctorate. And so I came upon this field by chance 37 years ago, and I've been hooked on it. So you just never know where your career is going to take you, but do what's in your heart, or it really doesn't work any other way. And I just kept doing what I was passionate about and what was in my heart. And I found an opportunity that I've loved now for 37 plus years.
Awesome, thank you. I know you mentioned a little bit about your pathway and sort of some of the steps that you took to get to where you are today. So for my next question, if I could have someone answer about, what was your pathway to your career? What, education did you need to get to where you are? What were some of the steps that you took?
I can go ahead and answer that one. So for me, I started off in high school, and upon graduation, I got my undergraduate degree, so a bachelor's in healthcare studies, but it can be a bachelor's of anything really that gets all the courses that you need for the graduate school portion. So after I graduated from a university with a 4-year program, and then I applied to graduate program at UTMB for the doctorate of physical therapy. So the total after high school was a 7-year journey, and then along the way, of course, getting involved as much as I can, getting experience at various hospitals, clinics, talking to people that are doing what I'm doing now, but just getting an idea of what it is that they do. So, it's a process.
Thank you. And then for Anna and Wes, I know that your jobs are definitely very very different than what you might think of when you think of American Red Cross or when you think of Citigroup. So can you tell me a little bit more about what your day-to-day looks like in your role?
Sure. So with the American Red Cross, because we have so many different lines of service, whether it's service to armed forces, um, working with volunteers, our blood services, hosting blood drives, and our fund development fundraising team. For me, a day to day is just meeting with each of the department directors to see where they're at, what they're doing with their staff, seeing what support they need from me and my team. My team is really comprised of our fleet or all of our Red Cross vehicles. We do all the maintenance and make sure that they're able to get blood mobiles out to blood drives. And so I work with my fleet coordinator just to ensure that she's got schedules and drivers set up for those. With my facilities team, similar to actually when I worked at Uplift Mighty for 5 years, I have a facilities team that takes care of the facilities, make sure that all the maintenance and repair is getting done, keeping them clean for our staff and our volunteers and those in need that come in. And then the last group that I really work with on a daily basis is our business operations team. These are the folks that do all of our ordering, all of our inventory, and just making sure that each line of service has the supplies that they need to make sure that we can provide assistance to our communities.
Thank you.
So for me, so we basically work as more like a liaison between the technology group and the financial group. So we take everything that the different financial groups need as far as reporting goes, different types of templates that they need. And then we translate that back to the technology team that actually creates that within our application. So a lot of it has to do with managing different groups to be able to talk to each other. So my day-to-day definitely consists of a lot of meetings, a lot of emailing back and forth, working with these different teams to understand what their demands are in order to meet that. So that's pretty much it, high level.
Yeah, thank you. So I know that we have some Uplift alum who are on the call as panelists, but I would definitely love to hear from you all or any of our other panelists. What are some things that you wish you had known in high school that would have been beneficial as you sort of have progressed through your career?
I can start. I went to, and I graduated from North Hills. I went to North Hills from 6th grade to 12th grade. And there were times where I was like, oh, I'm not going to need this, or when am I ever going to use this statistics course? Because I think I took AP stats, but I definitely use statistics. I mean, I ended up taking like biostatistics in college and in my master's program. So something I wish in high school, don't be so quick to just dismiss something because you don't have like an initial interest in it. I think it's important to just soak up as much as you can, because you never know whenever you'll need it again. I know a lot of people who didn't have an interest in math or like computer science in high school, and now they're making a transformation after college. So you just never know whenever you're going to need some information from classes that you were once exposed to, even at the high school level.
And I'm just going to go off of what Sky said. We were actually in the same class and graduated. We were good friends back in the day. We still are.
Yeah.
So, like I agree with everything that Sky has said. And I think it's also important to try whatever it is and whatever class that you're doing, actually give it a shot, not just for the grade. But if I were to give advice to anyone in school, it'd be to see if you're interested in the topic more so than making the grade that is, what's expected out of you. See if that topic is interesting to you, whether it's chemistry. See if it's interesting, if you think, or if you want to learn more about it, because that'll give you a good foundation for what you want to do in college, if that makes sense. So you'll remember some of the classes or the lectures or even a page out of a book that you genuinely found interesting. So that'll help you navigate and figure out what path is good for you when you're continuing your studies or work or whatever it may be.
Thank you. And then let's see, if I guess sort of moving forward from there, if I could hear from some of our panelists about what is your favorite part of your job, and then what is also the most challenging part of your job.
So I guess I can start. This is Marty. I mean, one of the favorite parts of my job is no one day is like the other day. Everyone is unique, and the challenges. So I work on leading edge technology. I work with so many different people in so many factories all over the world, that I get to work on so many, like I said, with different people, communicating with different people. Each project brings with it its own unique set of challenges. And they really are challenges and problems to work through. So that's what I love, is that everything's new. You have to come up with a solution to a problem, and working through that and working with teams to make that happen is another big thing. I really love working with teams and people because that's how you learn, and that's how you basically learn from each other and become better in your career. One of the least challenging is the paperwork, any paperwork or bureaucracy that's associated. And there's some of that, we all have to do that from time to time, but certainly the paperwork is probably the least satisfying.
I can relate to that. Does anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I'll share something specifically with the Red Cross. You know, one of the things we do here is disaster relief, and so it's kind of you know, it's good and bad. It's sad to see people that are displaced from their home or their apartment because of a fire or a natural disaster, earthquake, flooding, tornadoes. It's really sad to see people in such a sad situation, but it's also really rewarding to know that you are there to help them get back on their feet and make a difference. So for me, that's one of the highlights of my days, is hearing those types of stories and being involved in our communities, even though it comes from typically a place of sadness.
Okay, and so I am going to ask one more question before we turn it over to our scholar moderators. So scholars watching, if you have any questions that you want answered, go ahead and start putting those in the Q&A box. But for my final question, you all have mentioned a lot about different personality traits or things that go with your job. So things like working in a group or you know, problem solving. So what are some skills that you think are a requirement for your job or that make someone good at what you do?
I'll go ahead and start. As a healthcare provider, I think one of the biggest things is to be empathetic. I think that goes a long way, especially when, you know, as a physical therapist, trying to see or to get a feel of where you know, where they're coming from. So patients may have something that's constraining them from doing what they want to do, to actually listen and understand why it is that they're struggling. I think that goes a big way, and to be encouraging as well. I think especially for those of you that are interested in the healthcare field, it can be a little bit desensitizing to continuously hear about cases or hear about people that are, you know, struggling, you know, physically. So trying to bring light to their life is definitely, you know, you have to be, I recommend healthcare providers to be optimistic and encouraging throughout the process.
So one of the skills that I know when I've had different interviews in my career has been definitely being able to be resourceful. So a lot of the information that we get in our company or in our fields is not given to us, right? So we have to go out there and look for it. So being able to research, be resourceful with your information is definitely important. Then the other thing I've also heard throughout my career is attitude. You know, like I've heard before in the past where managers will say, I'd rather hire someone who is maybe not as technical or not as subject matter expert, but has the right attitude and wants to learn. I think that's really important, not just in the career that I've had, but I think in any career that you decide to be in.
Thank you. And then before I pass it over, does anyone else want to chime in with a response?
Yes, I would say again, lots of echo what everybody said, but also communication is really important too. Sometimes leadership, obviously technical aptitude, skill sets, obviously depending upon the job you have, but communication is very important, right? Being able to communicate with different people, working with teams, I think is a key skill you would like to have.
Thank
Yeah,
you for that.
absolutely. And I would echo all of those things that everyone has mentioned, but I would also add, for me as a researcher and as a consultant, it's important to, I guess, like think big or think outside the box and get creative. If creativity is a skill, you know, think kind of unconventionally and just, yeah, like think outside of the box. Also taking initiative. Not everyone may hold your hand, not even in college, high school, and it's just having that go-getter attitude, I think is extremely helpful.
Thank you. So I see that the questions are rolling in. So I am going to turn it over to our scholar moderators and Tia McLean to start taking some of those.
Awesome. And thank you all for those questions. At this time, I do want to invite our scholar moderators to begin introducing themselves and then jumping into the Q&A box and asking some of the questions that your scholars have presented. I'm going to start with Miss Alina and go in alphabetical order. So Alina, and then we'll go to Blakely.
So hi, my name is Lena and I'm a junior at North Hills. And so one of the top upvoted questions in the Q&A was, what do you guys think about concerns about diversity or lack thereof in the STEM fields? And how does your, maybe your company specifically, or just in general, how do you think in the STEM field people create a fair working environment?
Hey, Alina, this is Wes. Thanks for that question. I typed an answer as I was previewing stuff in that Q&A box. And for us at the Red Cross, one of the things that we do is it starts with our application and our talent pool on when we're looking to make a hire, whether that's in our facilities team or a director position, a national level position. You know, we look for diversity in our candidates. What we do is, as a leadership team, we do meet quarterly with our human resources department, and they let us know kind of where we stand in our workforce in engaging a diverse community or a diverse workforce that represents our community. The three that we really look at is gender, race, and veteran status, and you know, just ensure that we're you know, reaching out to qualified candidates in each of those areas.
And Alina, if I could add on Texas Instruments, much the same as what Wes had shared, we actually have a diversity network that's comprised of 15 different employee-driven initiatives, gender-based, but also we have faith-based, we have veterans initiatives, but over 15 different of these to promote the idea of, no, we can have differences, we can have different beliefs, we can have different backgrounds, we can have different cultures, but in the end, we can learn. We can use those as opportunities to learn and work together. And I've learned so much and been able to work together through this diversity network. As a matter of fact, I had the opportunity to be a chair overseeing the entire network that TI has. And it's still prospering and growing, but it's a part of our hiring process. It's a part of our goals from the top down, that we respect each other and that we learn how to work together, because it's an opportunity to learn and to grow.
Such an important question. Thank you so much, Marty and Wes. I'm going to now have Ms. Blakely to do her introduction and go ahead and ask your question.
Hey everyone, my name is Blakely Creamer and I'm a senior at Uplift Luna. And I would like to ask Destiny's question. She asks, when you are all in high school, did you have multiple careers that you want to pursue? And further than that, like, how would you all recommend navigating choosing a branch of STEM to go into? I know a lot of people can kind of be confused. They don't really know the distinctions between them all. So how was the process for you all?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with that one. Yeah, I definitely graduating high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do, to be quite frank with you. And I think once I got into college and explored a little bit more, but the best advice that I would say is to get your feet wet. You know, either go volunteer, go talk to someone that has a job that you are curious about, shadow them for a day and see what their life is like on and off the job. I think that getting your feet wet would be the best experience that you can have. You know, that way you'll know what you're getting yourself into beforehand, and really don't just stick to one. If you find one that you like, as sure as you are, especially when you're younger, try a couple others and see what's the best fit for you.
I would agree with Nathan. But whenever I graduated from high school, I was like so certain I wanted to go to medical school and become a doctor, because that's just something that I thought I'd always wanted. But then after going to college and taking like different courses and attending different panel discussions such as this, I learned about like what public health was, and it just encompassed more of what I wanted to do in my life's work. So like Nathan said, like getting your feet wet, using like volunteer opportunities, panel discussions, talks, even like YouTube. I mean, I had YouTube in like 6th grade, but now you have YouTube in like kindergarten. So, you know, the world is at our fingertips, and just taking that initiative to just get involved and see like what you like.
Awesome. If we could have Sawyer introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm Sawyer. I'm from Uplift Luna. And I actually have a question for Sky because you were talking about how it's important to think outside of the box and take initiative in your career. And I just wanted to ask, like, how do you stay self-assured and assertive if you encounter difficulty or someone challenges you?
That is a great question, because sometimes that does happen. I find it important, or what has always helped me, even in high school, college, graduate school, is having a mentor, someone that I trust and that respects me and that I respect and that I value and they value me. And it's a professional relationship, but it could also be personal. Having someone to kind of guide you through tough situations, or, you know, where you can be honest and say like, hey, you know, I'm thinking this, what do you think about this? Or I want to reply in this way, or I'm interested in investigating this, you know, what do you think? I think it's always healthy to bounce your ideas off of someone, especially if it's someone in a position where you either see yourself being, or they have qualities that you would love to see in yourself in the future. That's how I kind of stay, or that's how I feel validated in some ways, by just having a mentor. And I've had multiple throughout high school, college, graduate, in my current career. I think it's very important. Like, I stress that.
Alina.
Thank you.
So another one of the questions in the chat was talking about if any of you have encountered any sort of like ethical sort of issues or things like that, and how you've sort of combated that within your company or within just the STEM field in general, and how you would how you approached those situations.
So, so I would say from my experience, it really does depend on the area and the company that you work for. Most companies have guidelines, and they also have human resources that you can work with as well. I've always had to try to strive to having a good working relationship with everyone. Obviously, if there's something that I don't see fit or I have a question on, I always work with my manager, and then from there take it to HR if needed. But really, that's established within the company. But I can say that throughout my career, well, since high school and college and then going to grad school, ethics is really a huge part of your learning in your career. So it's ever present. Like, we take trainings every time on it. So very important.
Hey, and if I can maybe add just like a different perspective from that, one thing that I have always done, I worked for the YMCA for 15 years. I worked with Uplift for 5 years, and then now with the Red Cross for about a year. And one thing that all three of these careers have in common is that these organizations are very mission driven and mission focused. And for me, when I look at moral or ethical dilemmas, oftentimes that happens once you're in the job. But for me, I'll just share my perspective of when I'm looking for jobs and I'm looking for work. I always was looking for a company that had a mission statement that I aligned with, or core values that I aligned with, because then I knew that me, my personality, my work ethic, those things would fall into line and fall into place, and align with everybody else that I work with for the most part. So for me, I just say I look for those missions and mission statements that I can get behind, a company that I want to work for, and know that I'm probably going to be working with like-minded individuals.
I would agree with what, what Wes just mentioned. Same thing. I looked at the missions, when you look at the goals and mission statements for Texas Instruments, ethics are at the heart of it. And when you see that, you're only going to want to give more to the company when you know that they're behind what the words are. It's one thing to say something. It's one thing when you see them the acts are behind what the words say. And it makes it that much better and stronger to work with people. You know, I have had some instances where I've been in meetings and maybe there was some words or things that were said that were not the right things to say in a professional work environment. We have an ethics department at TI, so when that happens, you can go talk to somebody in the ethics department. You can voice your concern, and they will, of course, treat that with the priority it deserves and talk to the person or people that are impacted, of course, anonymously to resolve the situation quickly.
Awesome. Thank you all for that. Let's swing to Blakely.
So what is one tip that you guys would recommend for people who are majoring in STEM in college?
So if it's, I'll start. I know several other people said this, Nithin and some Sky said this earlier, but with one tip, I would say there's several, but I'll just give one, let the others provide. Say, be curious, ask questions, don't be afraid to learn, always strive to learn.
I would say definitely just make connections, right? With your fellow STEM graduates, I would definitely start building your network in college. I don't think it's a very common degree that a lot of people take. I know there are other degrees out there that might be a lot more common. So I would say definitely build your relationships and your network in college starting now.
I would add, do not underestimate yourself, but also do not be afraid to ask for help.
I love it. Thank you all. Sawyer.
Yeah, so I'm kind of gonna combine like what question in the chat with mine because they're kind of similar. So the question in the chat is what expectations are placed for people like you in the positions you hold, and do you believe that those expectations will change in these coming years? And it was kind of like mine. STEM is known for being a field full of advancement. How do you stay relevant in your career?
Yeah, I think I can speak on this just a bit from the healthcare perspective again. It's especially after COVID and everything has taken place, there's a lot of medical practices and everything being run via Zoom and telehealth. And you know, the government is starting to fund it now. And I think that I've noticed that a lot of the older physical therapists are having a little bit more of a difficulty in transitioning into that. And so I think that if, you know, as this new and upcoming generation like yourself, it would be good to stay up to date with everything so you can bring all these, you know, all these new technological innovations into each and every field, wherever it is. I think, like Sky said, thinking outside of the box and being creative will always be awarded in the society is what I think. And, you know, solving problems like that's, especially the way that COVID and the way that our lifestyles are happening now, these type of panels this panel wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for, you know, COVID and technology and the way that these things are taking place. So again, major props to both of these alumni coordinators for making this happen, because I know that we're all from various places across the states. So just being up to date and always thinking to yourself, there's a problem, what can I do to solve it? I think that would help you all in your careers moving forward.
Yes, I think the word, you know, some of what Nithin just mentioned is innovate, right? Don't be afraid, innovate, come up with new ways to do things, to solve problems as they appear. Don't be afraid to try something that might end up making a big difference and impact. And in terms of, you know, our careers, they're always changing. We're always expected to, we all want to grow in our careers. We all want to be challenged. Everybody's going to keep raising the bar, right? Once you succeed in something, and you want that to happen. You don't want anything to become routine. So keep raising the bar to yourself, keep striving for the next goal, but keep raising that bar and going higher and higher, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't.
Thank you all so much. We have time for one more round of questions. So I'm going to swing back to Alina for our last round.
So one thing that I saw a lot in the Q&A was sort of like, if you remember in high school, how did you prepare for your career? Sort of like maybe what extracurriculars you did, or any like internships or anything else you did. And this is also for the people who graduated from an Uplift school. And someone asked how Uplift prepared you for a career in the medical industry.
One of the greatest things that going to an Uplift school taught me was really like how to study. I I don't know how any other way to say it, but I'm sure you all study a lot. But that was one of the greatest things that I took away from my high school experience. Of course, I mean, extracurriculars like sports are cool, but also just the community service aspect. I think we had a graduation requirement of maybe 100 hours. Like, Nathan, do you remember? But that was tremendously helpful, especially going to college. And my college that I went to was community service like centered. I went to Spelman College, a historically Black college and university, and it's all women, but service was at the core of our like mission. So it kind of inspired me for my collegiate career. It was always a part of it, but learning how to study in high school helped me tremendously. And I could, there were some of my like peers in college that didn't really know how to study from high school. They didn't really need to. So I thought that it was to my advantage after leaving North Hills.
To just add on to what Sky was saying too, yeah, the community service, I didn't realize either, but I also prioritized that quite a bit with my grad school too, going to international trips for therapy to Peru and Kenya. I guess North Hills did do a good job of instilling that into us. But another thing that I would say Uplift, or specifically North Hills, what they did was, growing in school, I was never the kid that made the straight A's. I never was, but they always instilled the fact that being media or mediocrity is not an option. It was only until recently that I still remember the pledge that we would have to say every morning in North Hills. But I think they instilled, right? They instilled this this into our heads that we don't care what any other schools are doing. What we are to do is we have to contribute to the society. So I think that's played a big role. And I look around and it's happy to see people like my classmates, like Sky here, and most of our friends. I see them all in great places, and it's just, I love how Uplift has instilled in us that just because others are doing something doesn't mean that that's your standards. Uplift has its own standards, and we will always strive to reach them. And I still, take that with me.
Thank you. Blakely?
Here's a question from the Q&A. Does your career have a good work-life balance? And if it does, has it always been like that? How do you guys manage your time? Yeah.
So again, this is Marty, and most definitely yes on the work-life balance. Again, the company clearly sends a very strong message that they care about you as a person, right? And again, that makes a big difference when you see that. You're only going to work that much harder. They understand family constraints. They understand if you have children, illnesses, the responsibilities for taking care of elder people in your family. All of that's completely comprehended and understood. So excellent in terms of work-life balance and understanding and respecting employees. And, to me, it's never been a question. I can exercise, I can coach outside of work, I can coach the boys basketball team. I can find a way to do the other things that I enjoy with the work that I do and keep everything, but each person and the company understands that that's part of you as a person.
Could we have one more panelist touch on work-life balance, please?
Yeah, so I think I'm very similar to Marty too. We definitely have a good work-life balance at Citi. We were able to work from home way before COVID started, and I know that's really helpful depending on the days and in your personal life. I like it because it gives me a sense of autonomy, so I feel like I'm a manager of my own time. I also like the flexibility. So if I don't want to work from home, I can go to a restaurant or a cafe and work from there, take meetings from there. It's also allowed me to travel. So if I want to go travel, say to a different city and still be able to access my work and log in, I can still do that too. So definitely good work-life balance. And I think a lot of companies are starting to adopt this model. So that's exciting.
These are such great and relevant questions that we're getting. I'm so happy about that. I'm going to have Sawyer end us off today.
My question is, have you ever encountered a major setback in your career, and how did you regroup and just keep going?
I can touch. Oh, go for it, Wes.
Go ahead, Nathan. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I think for me it was in undergrad. There was one class that I just couldn't get down. I think it was chemistry. I just don't like chemistry. I'm so sorry about that, Hardy. But I wasn't getting it. I retook the class. I still made a B or something. I'm not sure what it was. And then I talked to my advisor, and she was like, "Yeah, I would wait a year and then apply after you do that." But I think I just took that time. And I think this may touch on one of the other Q&As too. So I went to another. I just took it again and just don't give up. I feel like find people that are there to support you and keep you going. And it sounds super cliche, but I feel like the successful people in the world are not the ones that never failed. It's the ones that have always picked themselves back up. I guarantee that everyone here, everyone hosting, all of us, we've all failed and we will continue to fail, but it's what we do after the failure that makes us successful more than anything. So don't be scared to fail. It's good.
Yeah, and to build off that, I was going to say, for me, I looked at, the last few years, I was really looking for career advancement. And obviously, I loved what I was doing with Uplift, and I was looking for opportunities with our operations department, but it was really small, and sometimes there just aren't the right, the maybe it takes you another path, but you come back to it kind of thing. I looked at some other charter schools. I looked at other public schools. And I'll tell you, the interview process was tough, and I'd get to a final interview, and then I wouldn't be the candidate selected. But one thing that I did, whether it was an internal job that I was not selected for or external, I always asked for feedback. What are areas of growth? How can I develop myself to be the best candidate the next time? And that's one of the things really with Uplift that I was so grateful for. I had a great regional director of operations who allowed me the opportunity to grow, to try new things on my campus there, to work with another cohort of operations directors. And I'm even seeing that here in the Red Cross, knowing that, I want to advance my career. I see some great options out there for me, that I want to go for, but I've had to just get feedback. How can I be a better employee? What are the areas that I'm lacking in? And just realize that feedback, it's not to tell me that I'm a terrible employee or I'm not a good person. It's really just helping me build the skills needed to do the job.
Thank you so much for that, Wes. We actually have one more question. Blakely wants to ask one more question. And Blakely, I will let you go right ahead.
So really quickly, what was one of the most interesting projects you guys worked on in your career?
I could speak to a really cool internship experience I had whenever I was in college. I was working at the Vaccine Research Center at the National Institutes of Health. we're in a pandemic right now, but I was working on a universal flu vaccine. And at the time, this is whenever I thought I really wanted to do or pursue like medicine specifically. And I worked with Kizzmekia Corbett. She's actually like one of the lead scientists that spearheaded the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. So I got to work alongside her, but on a universal flu vaccine. That has been one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had. I was able to do mice immunizations. So I got to like handle real mice. That was weird. It was hard, but it was a really enriching lab experience. And it was in my junior year of college. That was one of the most interesting projects I ever worked on.
Very cool. Do we have one more panelist who wants to share?
I can share. I was working on a semiconductor chip that basically goes into a lot of the cell phones that all you folks, or many of you are using. Very, very tiny chip, as you can imagine. Very, very complex circuitry. We had never seen anything as complex as this before at Texas Instruments in our particular business unit. There was going to be a lot of volume that was going to be tied to this at the end from this company, which we continue to realize today, but a very, very demanding customer, as you can imagine, that sometimes would get right in and work right alongside of us to help us solve the problems. So, we spent the better part of a year or two working on this project. We learned so much from working with the customer. Yes, they were very demanding, but it helped us immensely on additional products that came to us down the road. And we were able to realize a tremendous amount of production volume for given the success of this project that's lasted until today.
Thank you all so much for your insight today. And I'm so proud of our scholars and our scholar moderators. The questions were high level, they were great. I am now going to pass it back to Ms. Hendricks to wrap us up for the day. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, so we are going to wrap up for today. Thank you to all of our scholars for tuning in and submitting all of those great questions. And then a special thank you to our panelists and our scholar moderators. I loved the questions that were asked from our scholars, but also I loved the responses too. And I feel like I took in so much great information, so I know they did as well. For our scholars that are on the call right now, before you go, I would love for you to just give us some feedback. So in the chat, you can see a link that I just dropped. You can click that, take a quick survey, let us know what you thought. So that way we can continue and improve these in the future. But that is the end of our panel for today. So